Dawn breaks over Dubai's Palm Jumeirah, painting the sky in hues of gold that seem to celebrate the Emirates' endless wealth. But inside one private villa, where marble floors imported from Italy gleam under crystal chandeliers, Sheikh Hamdan Al-Nuaimi stares at the body of his bride. Blood pools beneath her ivory gown, spreading across the floor like an accusation. Her name was Ana Cruz. At least that's who she was supposed to be. On the floor beside her, a torn marriage contract, a receipt for $3 million, and a single manila envelope containing a medical certificate stamped Virgin Verified. The document that sealed her fate. She wasn't the woman he paid for. But in the world of elite Emirati marriages, fraud isn't just betrayal, it's a death sentence. To our incredible viewers and loyal subscribers, thank you for standing by us. Your support means everything. Stay with us as we bring you daily updates on the most chilling and shocking true crime stories you can't look away from. And remember, hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Ana Cruz was born in Cebu, Philippines to parents who worked 18-hour days to put rice on the table. Her father drove a jeepney through congested streets while her mother cleaned hotel rooms for wealthy tourists who tipped in pocket change. Ana was different, valedictorian of her high school, nursing graduate who spoke perfect English, beautiful in a way that transcended cultural boundaries, high cheekbones, almond eyes, and a smile that made people trust her immediately. Picture this. A young woman from the slums of Cebu, spending her days caring for the elderly at a local hospital and her nights studying Arabic phrases from textbooks she couldn't afford to buy. Ana had dreams bigger than her circumstances. She wanted to send her brother to college, buy her parents a concrete house to replace their tin-roofed shack, prove that beauty could be currency when brains alone weren't enough. Her mother, Lourdes Cruz, spent 14 years washing sheets at five-star hotels. Her father, Miguel, drove tourists through dangerous streets until his eyesight began to fail. They were proud of their daughter, but worried about her ambitions. Some doors weren't meant for people like us, Lourdes would say, lighting candles at church for Ana's protection. Ana disagreed. Then came the diagnosis that changed everything: chronic kidney failure. Ana's brother Carlo needed dialysis 3 times a week. The bills piled up, the options narrowed, and Ana made a decision that would seal her fate and fracture her family forever. She walked into the Manila recruitment office of Golden Lotus Bridal, a Dubai-licensed agency specializing in halal-compliant international brides. Their slogan, displayed in elegant gold script, "Purity verified, obedience guaranteed." If you're joining us for the first time, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our in-depth investigations. Our team spends months researching these cases to bring you the most complete picture possible of what happens when wealth, power, and desperation collide. Golden Lotus wasn't just any marriage agency. Their Dubai headquarters occupied the 37th floor of a gleaming skyscraper. Their client list included oil magnates, tech billionaires, and royal family members from across the Middle East. They didn't sell brides. They curated legacy partners for men whose bloodlines were worth billions. The screening process was brutal. Ana underwent psychological evaluations, cultural compatibility tests, religious examinations. She submitted to full medical verification, including documentation of every birthmark, scar, and physical characteristic. The clinics weren't just checking for disease, they were verifying her intact state. In conservative Emirati circles, virginity wasn't just preferred. It was a contractual obligation worth millions. Ana passed every test. The agency was impressed by her nursing background, valuable in a culture where wives often serve as private healthcare providers to their husbands' aging parents. Her English fluency and quick grasp of Arabic basics made her a prime candidate for their highest-paying clients. And her beauty was marketable in ways that transcended cultural preferences. "You'll fetch at least $2 million, the recruiter told her, reviewing her file with calculating eyes. "Maybe more if we find the right match." Enter Sheikh Hamdan Al-Nuaimi, 34 years old, heir to a real estate empire that had transformed Dubai's skyline, recently appointed to his father's board of directors. Educated at London Business School but deeply traditional in his personal values. His family owned 17 properties across 4 continents and employed over 8,000 people worldwide. Their name appeared on hospitals, universities, and government buildings throughout the Emirates. Hamdan wasn't looking for love, he was securing a legacy. His first marriage to a cousin had ended in divorce after she failed to produce heirs. His family council had approved his request for a foreign bride on one condition. She must be pure, obedient, and properly vetted. The family's honor couldn't withstand another failure. When Golden Lotus presented Ana's file, Hamdan was immediately interested. Her medical background would be useful as his father's health declined. Her beauty would be an asset at business functions. And most importantly, she had no family connections in Dubai who might complicate the power dynamics of their household. The negotiations were swift and clinical. $3 million, the highest dowry Golden Lotus had ever arranged, would be paid directly to Ana's family upon verification of the marriage consummation. The contract included specific clauses about childbearing expectations, behavioral requirements, and family obligations. Ana would receive no personal funds. Her financial security would depend entirely on her husband's ongoing approval. The legal terms were clear. Once verified and married, Ana would belong completely to the Al-Nuaimi family. She would surrender her passport, social media accounts, and outside communications. She would adopt their faith, their customs, and their expectations. She would exist to serve the dynasty's needs. Ana signed every page with steady hands. The agency representative explained what would happen next. Hymenoplasty to ensure she met the physical requirements of the contract, 3 months of cultural and religious training, and regular medical monitoring to ensure her condition remained as advertised. "You've made a wise choice," the representative told her, sliding the contract into a leather portfolio. "Your family will never worry about money again." What Ana didn't know, what the contract didn't specify, was that she had also signed away her rights to autonomy, safety, and ultimately her life. Back home in Cebu, the first payment arrived. Carlo began dialysis treatments at a private hospital. Her parents moved into a small concrete house with actual glass windows. For the first time in their lives, the Cruz family ate 3 meals a day without worrying about tomorrow. They told neighbors that Ana had received a nursing scholarship in Dubai. The shame of selling their daughter was easier to bear than watching their son die. The wedding preparations proceeded with military precision. Ana moved into Golden Lotus's Dubai bride preparation facility, a luxury apartment complex where prospective brides were housed, trained, and monitored around the clock. Her days were filled with Arabic lessons, etiquette training, religious instruction, and endless medical examinations. She learned to walk with perfect posture, speak with proper deference, and anticipate a husband's needs before he expressed them. "You're not just marrying a man," her cultural instructor explained. "You're marrying his family, his tribe, his legacy. One wrong move could dishonor generations." The Al-Nuaimi family sent representatives to monitor her progress. Hamdan's mother visited twice, inspecting Ana like fine merchandise, asking pointed questions about her fertility and family medical history. His sisters came once, whispering among themselves about her skin tone and accent. No one asked what she wanted or who she had been before. Wedding plans expanded as the date approached. The ceremony would be held at the Burj Al Arab, with 500 guests including government officials and business partners. Ana's dress would cost more than her parents' house. The 7-day celebration would include falconry displays, celebrity performers, and gifts for guests that exceeded what most Filipino families earned in a year. If you're still with me and finding this story shocking, wait until you hear what happens next. Don't forget to like this video and leave a comment below telling us what you think about international bride arrangements. Your engagement helps us continue bringing these hidden stories to light. Just days before the wedding, disaster struck. Ana collapsed during a final dress fitting, her body burning with fever. The diagnosis was swift and terrifying. Dengue fever, contracted despite the facility's rigorous health protocols. Her condition deteriorated rapidly. The doctors warned she might not recover in time for the ceremony. Golden Lotus faced a crisis. The contract had been signed. The money had been partially distributed. The ceremony couldn't be postponed without raising questions about Ana's condition. questions that might lead to the Almuemi family canceling the arrangement entirely. The agency director made a call. "Activate Protocol Delta," she instructed her staff. "Swap the face. Keep the contract." Enter Bianca Reyes, 24 years old. Ana's cousin, recruited months earlier as a backup option for another client. Similar height, similar bone structure. Already a mother of 2 young children. Divorced from an abusive husband. Desperate for money to escape mounting debts. Unlike Ana, Bianca had never been to college. She'd married at 18 to escape her parents' home and had been abandoned by her husband after the birth of their second child. She worked as a cashier at a Manila shopping mall, sending most of her paycheck to her parents who were raising her children while she worked double shifts. When Golden Lotus approached her, the offer seemed impossible. $90,000 to impersonate her cousin for a single night. They would alter her passport, coach her on Ana's mannerisms, and ensure she knew enough about the real bride to pass basic scrutiny. Ana would supposedly recover and take her rightful place in the household within days, once the marriage was legally and physically consummated. Just one night, they promised. Ana's already done the hard part. The family has already accepted her. You just need to get through the ceremony and wedding night. Then we'll switch you back, and no one will ever know. The warnings were clear. Don't speak Tagalog. Don't mention your children. Don't contradict anything the groom says about previous meetings with Ana. Bianca wasn't naive. She knew the risks, but her children were sleeping on a dirt floor in her parents' one-room house. Her daughter needed asthma medication they couldn't afford. Her son was being bullied at school for his shabby clothes. $90,000 wasn't just money. It was salvation. "What happens if they discover I'm not Ana?" she asked the agency representative. "They won't," came the confident reply. "We've done this before." What they didn't tell her, what they couldn't possibly admit, was that Protocol Delta had a 100% success rate for the agency and a 0% survival rate for the replacement brides. Bianca was signing her death warrant, but the golden pen they handed her masked the color of blood. They told her it was just one night. The agency worker would later tell investigators, voice trembling with guilt. They never told her it could be her last. The elaborate deception was set in motion. Bianca underwent crash course training on Ana's life history, preferences, and mannerisms. Makeup artists worked miracles with contouring techniques to enhance their natural resemblance. The agency provided identical perfume, identical jewelry, identical vocal coaching. The wedding would proceed on schedule. The $3 million contract would be fulfilled. And somewhere in a private medical facility, the real Ana Cruz fought for her life, unaware that her cousin was about to die in her place. Golden Lotus Bridal operated from the 37th floor of the Al Majid Tower, its offices a testament to luxury that existed to comfort wealthy clients, not the women being sold. Behind frosted glass doors with gold-plated handles, lives were negotiated like business mergers, with profit margins calculated in blood and futures. But the real machine, the one that processed human beings like commodities, operated from a nondescript building in Manila's business district, where desperate women lined up daily, drawn by whispered promises of escape from poverty. The agency wasn't just selling brides. It was manufacturing products designed to meet exact specifications. Virginity restoration surgeries, cultural reprogramming, psychological conditioning, all conducted with clinical precision in facilities that resembled five-star hotels on the surface but operated like factories underneath. If you've ever wondered how the ultra-wealthy solve their most intimate problems, keep watching. Because Golden Lotus wasn't a dating service. It was a human supply chain with quality control mechanisms that would make Fortune 500 companies envious. And if you're finding this disturbing, hit that subscribe button, because we're just scratching the surface of how marriage markets operate in the shadows of global wealth. Behind the agency's sleek operation was Madame Zhang, a former medical professional whose name appeared on no official documents. Her real identity remained carefully obscured behind shell companies and offshore accounts. What clients knew was her reputation. She delivered perfection, guaranteed discretion, and solved problems that threatened to expose the ugly truth behind beautiful arrangements. Protocol Delta wasn't created for emergencies. A former agency employee later testified to human rights investigators. It was built into the business model. These men weren't paying millions for women. They were paying for perfect illusions. And when reality threatened those illusions, we had procedures ready. For Golden Lotus, Bianca Reyes wasn't a person. She was inventory, a backup option cataloged by physical measurements and facial structure. Her desperation made her ideal. 2 children to feed, crushing debt, an eviction notice taped to her door. When the agency approached her 6 months before Ana's wedding, they presented it as a modeling opportunity with generous compensation. "Your face is your fortune," the recruiter told her, photographing her from every angle in a small office above a Manila shopping mall. "We're looking for women who could be magazine models. Women who deserve better than what life has given them." What Bianca didn't know then was that she was being measured against her cousin's specifications, assessed for similarities that could survive close scrutiny. The agency maintained databases of substitutes, women who could replace primary brides if problems arose before consummation. It was insurance against the millions invested in each arrangement. When Ana collapsed with dengue fever 3 days before the wedding, Bianca received a call that would change, and ultimately end her life. "We have an opportunity," the voice explained. $90,000 for 1 night's work, a luxurious dress, a beautiful ceremony. All you have to do is smile and stay quiet. In a small beige room at the Manila recruitment office, Bianca sat before 3 agency representatives as they outlined what they called a temporary solution. Her cousin Ana was ill but recovering. The wedding couldn't be postponed without financial penalties and reputation damage. Bianca would step in for the ceremony and wedding night, then be quietly replaced once Ana recovered. "I'm already married," Bianca protested, twisting the cheap silver band on her finger. "I have children. I can't." "Your husband abandoned you 3 years ago," the senior representative interrupted, opening a file with disturbing details about Bianca's life. "Your civil marriage was never properly registered due to missing documentation. Legally, you're single, and your children are currently living with your parents in a house that's about to be repossessed." They knew everything: her debts, her children's names, her former husband's gambling problems. The invasion of privacy should have been her first warning, but desperation has a way of blunting survival instincts. "Just 1 night," they assured her. "You step in, fulfill the contract requirements, and go home with enough money to give your children the life they deserve." The agency moved with practiced efficiency. Bianca's passport was altered. She received intensive coaching on Ana's life history, preferences, and mannerisms. Makeup artists worked for hours contouring her features to enhance her natural resemblance to her cousin. "Don't speak Tagalog," they warned. "Don't mention your children. Don't contradict anything the groom says about previous meetings with Ana." They prepared answers for every possible question. They trained her to walk with Ana's slight hesitation before taking stairs. They made her practice Ana's signature until her hand cramped. They quizzed her relentlessly on personal details. What was Ana's grandmother's name? What medication is she allergic to? Which finger did she break playing volleyball at 16? If you're wondering how someone could possibly pull off such elaborate deception, remember, when $3 million is at stake, no detail is too small. Golden Lotus had perfected this process through years of problem-solving for wealthy clients. And they were betting on one crucial psychological fact: men see what they expect to see, especially when they've paid for it. The wedding day arrived in a blur of activity. The Burj Al Arab's royal suite transformed into a bridal preparation chamber, with 27 attendants fussing over every aspect of Bianca's appearance. The heavy makeup, elaborate hairstyling, and traditional wedding attire provided perfect camouflage for the subtle differences between cousins. Sheikh Hamdan waited in the hotel's grand ballroom, surrounded by 500 guests including government ministers, international business partners, and members of Dubai's elite social circles. The Al Nuaimi family had spared no expense. Crystal chandeliers imported from Venice, rare orchids flown in from Singapore, performance by an internationally acclaimed violinist. When Bianca entered on the arm of the agency director, playing the role of family representative, Hamdan's face lit with approval. under professional makeup and carefully controlled lighting. She looked identical to the woman he had met briefly during 3 chaperoned encounters. The veil covering her face provided additional security for the deception. The ceremony proceeded according to plan. Bianca had been coached to keep her responses minimal, her eyes downcast in appropriate modesty. Wealthy guests nodded approvingly at her quiet dignity. Hamden's mother watched with careful assessment, seemingly satisfied with her son's acquisition. If you're still with me, hit that like button because we're about to explore the psychological dynamics that turn a wedding day into a death sentence. The cultural context here isn't just background. It's the stage where this tragedy played out in blood. For conservative Emirati elites like the Al-Nuaimi family, marriage isn't primarily about love or even companionship. It's about lineage integrity. A bride's virginity isn't a preference. It's a binding contract tied to honor, inheritance, and tribal reputation. The $3 million dowry wasn't a gift. It was payment for guaranteed genetic purity in the family bloodline. As one cultural anthropologist explained to investigators, these arrangements aren't about sexual pleasure. They're about ensuring that every child born carries untainted family DNA. For men who will eventually inherit billions, controlling reproductive rights is just another business strategy. But cracks in the perfect illusion began appearing almost immediately. During the reception, Bianca flinched when addressed in Arabic phrases that Ana had supposedly mastered. She hesitated when Hamden's sister mentioned a conversation from their previous meeting, one the agency hadn't prepared her for. Most dangerously, she didn't recognize the personal perfume Hamden had sent as a pre-wedding gift, one Ana had supposedly chosen herself. "The bride seems nervous," one of Hamden's aunts whispered to his mother, watching Bianca's fingers tremble as she accepted ceremonial gifts. "All brides are nervous," the mother replied, though her eyes narrowed with assessment. "Especially foreign ones who understand what's expected of them." What was expected became increasingly clear as the reception continued. Multiple speeches referenced the Al-Nuaimi legacy, the importance of producing strong sons, the sacred trust placed in this new addition to the family. Sheikh Hamden's father raised a toast to pure bloodlines continuing for another generation, while business associates made thinly veiled references to the bride's verified status. In Emirati elite circles, these weren't just cultural traditions, they were financial imperatives. Hamden stood to inherit control of properties worth billions, but only if his marriage produced legitimate heirs. The family lawyers had crafted prenuptial agreements specifically linking inheritance rights to the bride's certified condition. With each hour that passed, Bianca felt the weight of deception growing heavier. The agency had assured her this was a simple substitution, a night of pretending to be someone else, followed by a discreet departure. What they hadn't explained was how deeply the verification process was embedded in the marriage contract, how many people were invested in confirming her authenticity, how many witnesses would be present for various ceremonial moments designed to validate her status. As evening approached, panic began setting in. Bianca had been instructed to avoid Hamden's mother, who had spent the most time with Ana during pre-wedding visits. But the woman seemed determined to have private conversations, approaching repeatedly with pointed questions about family details. The agency hadn't covered. "Your left eye," the mother said during one such moment, studying Bianca's face. "The small fleck of brown Ana showed me during our tea. It seems different in this light." "The makeup, perhaps?" Bianca replied softly, her heart pounding. "They applied so much today. These weren't just casual observations. They were verification checks from a woman who had examined merchandise she'd helped select." And with each small inconsistency, suspicion grew. The wedding coordinator, another Golden Lotus employee embedded in the event staff, noticed the danger signs. She intervened repeatedly, whisking Bianca away for bridal touch-ups whenever questioning became too intense. But she couldn't control the approaching wedding night, when all disguises would be impossible to maintain. As the reception concluded, Sheikh Hamden led his bride toward the elevator that would take them to the Burj Al Arab's most exclusive suite. His expression was difficult to read, part pride in his beautiful acquisition, part anticipation of confirming what he had paid for. His hand rested possessively on Bianca's lower back, guiding her with the confidence of ownership. "You've made my family proud today," he told her as the elevator doors closed. "Tonight, you'll make me proud as well." Bianca smiled through numb lips, remembering the agency's final warning. "Whatever happens, remember why you're doing this. For your children. For their future. It's just one night, and then you'll never see him again." The veil hid her face, but not her fate. If you want to know what happened when that hotel room door closed, when the perfect fraud unraveled in the most intimate way possible, stay tuned for our next segment. And remember to subscribe, because this story is about to reveal how a marriage contract became a death warrant. The royal suite at the Burj Al Arab exists in a realm beyond ordinary luxury. 22-carat gold leaf adorns the walls. Persian carpets worth more than most family homes cushion every step. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcase Dubai's glittering skyline. A perfect backdrop for perfect lives carefully constructed through wealth and power. It was here, in this monument to excess, that Bianca Reyes would spend her final hours on earth. Midnight, a bottle of Dom Perignon sat unopened in an engraved silver ice bucket. Sheikh Hamdan stood at the window, his silhouette framed against the city he partially owned. 3 generations of Al Nuaimi investments had transformed desert into empire, and now he was expected to transform this marriage into dynasty. Bianca sat at the edge of the massive bed, still wearing her wedding gown. The agency had prepared her for this moment with clinical instructions about proper behavior, appropriate responses, expected submission. But they hadn't prepared her for the suffocating reality of deception at its most intimate level. "Would you like champagne?" Hamdan asked, his English precise from years at London Business School. He turned from the window, studying his bride with eyes trained to assess value in everything from property to people. "No, thank you," she answered softly, remembering the agency's warning. Ana didn't drink alcohol. Hamdan nodded approvingly. Her modesty aligned with what he had paid for. A traditional woman whose purity extended beyond physical attributes to lifestyle choices that would complement his family's conservative values. If you find yourself stunned by the transactional nature of this arrangement, you're witnessing exactly what makes this case so disturbing. What happened in that hotel suite wasn't just about 2 individuals. It was the inevitable collision of systems that reduce human beings to commodities, where authenticity becomes just another luxury item with a price tag. Hamdan crossed the room with deliberate steps, stopping before Bianca. With unexpected gentleness, he lifted her veil, the final barrier between illusion and reality. "You are even more beautiful than I remembered," he said, his voice warm with what sounded almost like genuine affection. The Golden Lotus Agency had coached Bianca well. Keep eyes downcast. Smile shyly. Respond with gratitude to compliments. The script was working, but scripts can only carry deception so far. Hamdan helped her rise from the bed, his hands steady as he began unfastening the elaborate buttons of her wedding dress. This wasn't passion. It was procedure verification of the merchandise he had purchased at premium price. As the heavy silk gown slipped from her shoulders, panic flashed through Bianca's mind. The agency had provided extensive coaching about Ana's personality, preferences, and history, but they had overlooked one crucial detail in their rushed preparation. Bianca complied, her heart thundering in her chest. The moment stretched between them, heavy with expectation and dread. Then came the question that would transform everything. "Where is your mark?" he asked, his voice suddenly cold as desert night. "My mark?" she echoed, mind racing through everything the agency had told her. "The birthmark. Here." His finger touched her left shoulder where smooth skin showed no trace of the small crescent-shaped mark documented in Ana's medical file, the mark his family doctor had personally verified during pre-wedding examinations. If you're wondering how such a small detail could trigger catastrophe, understand this. In arrangements worth millions, verification isn't casual. Ana's body had been documented with medical precision. Every birthmark, every scar had been photographed, measured, and included in the contract. This wasn't about intimacy. It was about authenticity. "I covered it," Bianca stammered, the lie transparent even as she spoke. "With makeup. For the wedding." But Hamdan was already reaching for his phone, scrolling through files until he found what he sought. The medical verification document showing Anna's distinctive birthmark. His expression hardened from confusion to dawning comprehension. "Who are you?" he demanded, stepping back, reassessing everything about the woman before him. The carefully constructed deception collapsed under the weight of that single question. Exhausted, terrified, and suddenly aware that no prepared answer would suffice, Bianca did the only thing left to her. She told the truth. "My name is Bianca Reyes. I'm Anna's cousin." The words tumbled out between shaky breaths. "Anna got sick, dengue fever. The agency asked me to take her place just for the wedding. Just until she recovers." "The agency?" Hamden's voice was dangerously quiet. "Golden Lotus. They said it was temporary. That Anna would take my place in a few days. That no one would know." Tears streamed down her face as she grabbed for the discarded wedding gown, clutching it to her chest like armor. "I have 2 children. They need medicine, food, a safe place to live. The agency offered me money. Enough to save them." If you've ever wondered what happens when a multimillion-dollar contract is exposed as fraud in a culture where honor dictates every interaction, stay with us. Because what happened next reveals how systems designed around human commodification inevitably lead to human tragedy. Hamden didn't yell. He didn't immediately react with the rage one might expect. Instead, he froze, his mind processing implications that reached far beyond the bedroom. This wasn't just deception. This was fraud against his bloodline, his father's legacy, his identity as a man who controlled his world. In Emirati elite culture, being tricked by a foreign bride was the ultimate shame, one that would follow him through business dealings, family gatherings, and social circles for generations. "My father warned me," he said finally, his voice barely audible. "He said foreign brides bring foreign problems. That I should have chosen from our own people." The psychological unraveling happening before Bianca's eyes wasn't simple anger. It was existential crisis. A man watching his carefully constructed world implode, knowing that news of this deception would destroy his standing among peers who measured worth through control. "I only did it to save them," Bianca pleaded, clutching the wedding gown tighter. "My son and daughter. They're everything to me." Perhaps it was the mention of children. Children who didn't belong to him, children who represented everything this fraudulent arrangement was supposed to prevent. Or perhaps it was the realization that he would have to explain this humiliation to his father, his uncles, his business partners who had witnessed the $3 million transaction. Whatever triggered it, Hamden's composure shattered. "Do you understand what you've done?" he asked, advancing toward her. "This isn't just about money. This is about honor, about trust, about my name." "I'm sorry," Bianca whispered, backing away until she hit the marble vanity. "The agency said no one would know, that I would leave quietly once Anna recovered. And I would never know I had been with the wrong woman? That everything, the ceremony, the contract, the blessing, was based on lies." Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because we're about to examine how culture, wealth, and power intersect to create situations where violence becomes almost inevitable. When a man's entire identity is built around control, what happens when that control is suddenly, irrevocably broken? What happened next occurred in the space of seconds but would be dissected for months by investigators trying to determine the boundary between accident and intention. Hamden lunged forward, not to strike but to grasp Bianca's shoulders, to force her to look at him as he demanded more answers. But panic made her resist, twisting away with such force that when he shoved her back, the impact against the marble vanity was far harder than he likely intended. The sound was sickening, bone meeting stone with catastrophic force. Bianca crumpled instantly, blood beginning to pool beneath her as internal bleeding began. For a moment, Hamden stood frozen, horror washing over his face as he witnessed the results of his rage. This wasn't supposed to happen. He hadn't meant to cause serious harm. "I'll call a doctor," he said, reaching for his phone with shaking hands. "We'll get help." But even as he dialed, another realization dawned, one that would transform accident into calculated crime. If he reported this, there would be questions, investigations, public exposure of the fraud. His family's name dragged through international media. The humiliation of admitting he had nearly married an impostor. Bianca moaned softly, still conscious but rapidly weakening as blood spread across the imported marble. "My children," she whispered. "Please, tell them I tried." Something in Hamden's expression changed as he looked down at her, not hardening but detaching, as if viewing a business problem rather than a dying woman. He set the phone down without completing the call. "I'm sorry," he said, though it wasn't clear whether he was apologizing for the injury or for what he was about to do, which was nothing. If you're wondering how a man educated at elite institutions, a man who championed charitable causes and considered himself moral, could watch someone die without helping, you're encountering the true horror of this story. It wasn't blind rage that killed Bianca Reyes. It was calculated self-preservation. Instead of calling emergency services, Sheikh Hamden Al-Nuaimi pulled a chair beside the vanity and sat, watching as Bianca's breathing became more labored. He didn't speak, didn't offer comfort, simply observed the biological process with clinical detachment, occasionally checking his watch as if timing how long death required. 14 minutes passed before Bianca Reyes took her final breath. 14 minutes during which help could have arrived, during which her life could have been saved. 14 minutes in which Hamden made a series of mental calculations weighing one woman's existence against his reputation, his family honor, and his business interests. When it was over, when he was certain she was gone, he finally made a call. Not to emergency services, but to his family's attorney. "We have a situation," he said, voice steady now that decision had replaced doubt. "I need discretion, and I need it immediately." As dawn broke over Dubai's Palm Jumeirah, Sheikh Hamden Al-Nuaimi stood in his private villa, staring at the body of his bride, blood pooling beneath her ivory gown. On the floor beside her, a torn marriage contract, a receipt for $3 million, and a single Manila clinic certificate stamped Virgin Verified. By sunrise, she was gone, and so was the truth. If you want to understand how power systems protect themselves, how wealth creates accountability shields that ordinary people can't access, stay with us for the next segment. Because what happened after Bianca's death reveals as much about institutional injustice as the murder itself. By the time the sun rose over Dubai's luxury skyline, Bianca Reyes' body had already been wrapped in expensive Egyptian cotton sheets, her blood carefully contained to prevent further staining of imported marble. Sheikh Hamden hadn't slept. The hours after her death had been consumed by methodical crisis management, a skill his family had perfected across decades of maintaining pristine public images despite private indiscretions. The call to his family attorney had set machinery in motion that few outside Dubai's elite circles ever witnessed. No emergency services, no police, no official reports that might create permanent records. Instead, a private medical transport team arrived at the hotel's VIP entrance at 4:17 a.m., their unmarked van and professional demeanor raising no suspicion among staff accustomed to wealthy guests' demands for privacy. What none of the hotel employees realized was that this particular medical team operated under contract with Golden Lotus Bridal. Their specialty wasn't saving lives. It was removing evidence of lives lost in arrangements gone wrong. If you're just joining us and wondering how such systems can exist in the modern world, stay with us. Because what happened in the aftermath of Bianca's death reveals networks of power and privilege designed specifically to ensure certain people never face consequences for their actions. The team worked with practiced efficiency. Body removed on a gurney covered by a medical drape suggesting patient transport rather than corpse removal. Suite cleaned by specialists using industrial-grade chemicals that eliminated DNA traces while preserving expensive surfaces. Wedding dress and personal effects incinerated in a facility normally used for medical waste. All completed before regular hotel staff began their morning shifts. By 7 a.m., Sheikh Hamden sat in his family's private office at their downtown headquarters, surrounded by senior advisors including attorneys, public relations specialists, and a doctor willing to sign necessary documentation without asking uncomfortable questions. "The situation is contained," his father's chief counsel assured him. "The official record will show your bride suffered an acute cardiac event during the night. Not uncommon in cases of extreme emotional stress like weddings, particularly with individuals from developing nations where early heart conditions often go undiagnosed. And the agency? Hamdan asked, his voice hollow from the night's events. Already notified. They're handling their end. The contract was fulfilled from a legal perspective. The bride arrived, the ceremony was performed, consummation was attempted. The 3 million remains with your estate. If this coldly pragmatic response shocks you, remember to hit that subscribe button. Because we're about to explore how money doesn't just buy luxury, it buys alternative systems of justice designed to protect wealth rather than truth. UAE authorities accepted the explanation without question. Standard procedure in cases involving prominent families whose financial influence shaped the Emirates' explosive growth. No autopsy was ordered. The death certificate listed natural causes, with the doctor's signature providing official closure to unofficial circumstances. Within 24 hours, Bianca Reyes' body was interred in an unmarked grave in Jebel Ali Cemetery, a facility primarily used for expatriate workers who died in Dubai. No funeral service. No memorial. No acknowledgement beyond paperwork filed in systems designed to process foreign deaths with minimal disruption to the Emirates' carefully cultivated image of paradise for the privileged. Meanwhile, Golden Lotus activated its own damage control protocols. The agency's Manila office contacted Ana Cruz, still recovering from dengue fever in a private medical facility they controlled. There's been a complication, the director explained, seated beside Ana's hospital bed. Your cousin volunteered to assist with certain ceremonial aspects while you recovered. Unfortunately, she experienced health issues of her own. What kind of health issues? Ana asked, strength returning enough for suspicion. Heart failure. Unexpected and tragic. The director's voice carried practiced sympathy. But you should understand your position clearly. If you speak about any arrangements involving your cousin, we'll say you orchestrated the swap yourself, that you sold your own cousin to cover your illness. The threat was explicit. Silence or criminal charges that would destroy what remained of Ana's family. The agency's power extended through networks of corrupted officials in both countries, ensuring any accusations would be redirected toward the surviving cousin rather than the organization that arranged the fatal substitution. What about her children? Ana whispered, tears streaming down her face. They'll receive compensation. $12,000 has already been transferred to her parents. They've been told Bianca died from fever contracted while working in Dubai. $12,000 for a human life. Less than 15% of what Bianca had been promised. The rest absorbed into Golden Lotus operating accounts as management fees and contingency expenses. If you're finding this story difficult to believe, consider this. International labor organizations estimate that over 150,000 women annually enter marriage arrangements involving financial transactions across borders. When these arrangements fail, the paper trails conveniently disappear along with the women involved. The systemic silence extended beyond individual threats. UAE media outlets, many owned by business conglomerates with connections to families like the Al Nwaimis, blacklisted the story entirely. Foreign journalists who attempted to investigate received immediate visa problems or discovered sources suddenly unwilling to speak on record. Overseas Filipino worker advocacy groups tried to launch investigations but hit diplomatic and legal walls at every turn. The Philippine embassy in Dubai, dependent on maintaining positive relations with UAE authorities to protect remittance flows from the hundreds of thousands of Filipinos working in the region, issued only a standard statement. We are investigating the reported death of a Filipino national and will provide consular assistance to the family. No investigation materialized. No questions about the suspicious timing or circumstances received official attention. In Cebu, Bianca's children, 7-year-old Jasmine and 5-year-old Miguel, waited for a mother who would never return. Their grandparents used the compensation to move to a slightly larger apartment where both children could have school uniforms and regular meals, but not the mother whose absence they couldn't understand. Mama had to stay in Dubai, they were told. The fever took her before she could come home. The children drew pictures for a mother who would never see them, saved special stones and feathers to show her when she returned, asked questions that had no truthful answers that wouldn't destroy what childhood innocence remained. When a woman is sold as a product, is her death just a return policy? For systems built around human commodification, the answer is embedded in the structures themselves. Sheikh Hamdan returned to business meetings within a week of Bianca's death, his demeanor somber but composed. Appropriate for a man whose bride had tragically died before their life together could truly begin. His family's PR team crafted careful statements expressing appropriate grief while emphasizing their son's resilience in the face of personal tragedy. Business partners offered condolences while privately ensuring ongoing deals remained on schedule. The $3 million dowry, already transferred to family accounts, remained untouched by scandal or investigation. Ana Cruz eventually recovered from dengue fever, but found herself trapped in Golden Lotus contracts that now included extensive non-disclosure agreements regarding both her cousin's death and the agency's operations. Violating these agreements would trigger financial penalties that would bankrupt her family and nullify the payments keeping her brother alive through regular dialysis. "You still owe us," the agency director reminded her during discharge from the medical facility. "Your family received significant advances against your contract. That debt doesn't disappear just because of unfortunate circumstances." The debt was recalculated as training and medical expenses, totaling nearly $200,000, a sum that would require years of service through other agency arrangements to repay. Ana had escaped death only to enter a different kind of prison, one constructed of financial obligation and threatened family harm. Golden Lotus itself underwent superficial transformation. The agency rebranded as Azure Brides within months of the incident, maintaining the same ownership structure and operational methods behind new logos and marketing materials. Their Manila recruitment offices moved to more upscale locations. Their Dubai headquarters expanded to another floor in the same luxury tower. Business continued without interruption. Wealthy men still sought verified brides from developing nations. Desperate women still signed contracts exchanging autonomy for family survival. The machine simply adjusted its quality control procedures to prevent similar verification failures in the future. If you're still with us through this disturbing examination of modern human trafficking disguised as marriage, hit that subscribe button. Because the most chilling aspect of this story isn't what happened in that hotel suite. It's how systems were already in place to ensure no one would ever be held accountable. For Sheikh Hamdan Al Nuaimi, UAE law offered complete protection. For Golden Lotus, corporate structures created perfect deniability. For Bianca's family, poverty ensured silence was the only survivable option. The only person who faced consequences was the one person the system was designed to render disposable, a mother who made a desperate choice for her children's future and paid with her life. In our next segment, we'll explore the psychological aftermath of Hamdan's decision and the legacy of institutionalized silence that continues to protect wealthy men from accountability. Don't forget to like this video and share it if you believe these hidden stories deserve exposure. Because sometimes the most expensive dowries buy the cheapest lies and the deadliest consequences. 2 months after Bianca Reyes' death, Sheikh Hamdan Al Nuaimi stood at the edge of Jebel Ali Cemetery, a place typically visited only by laborers mourning fallen colleagues from construction sites and service industries. The unmarked grave before him held no headstone, no identification. Just freshly packed soil still settling over secrets he had paid millions to bury. In his hand, white roses. In his mind, fragments of a night that had transformed him from respected businessman into something he struggled to reconcile with his carefully constructed self-image. "I never intended this," he whispered to the silent grave, words carried away by desert wind. "You should have told me the truth before it went so far." The justification felt hollow even as he spoke it, but Hamdan wasn't a monster, at least not in the simplistic way crime stories often portray wealthy killers. He was a man shattered by public and private humiliation, trapped between cultural expectations and human conscience, desperately trying to convince himself that honor had simply cost more than he expected to pay. If you're following this investigation and wondering how someone educated at elite institutions, someone who donated millions to children's charities and considered himself a modernizing force in Emirati society, could watch a woman die without intervention, stay with us. Because the psychology of privilege reveals how wealth doesn't just change what you can buy. It transforms what you believe you're entitled to control. Hamdan's childhood had been shaped by relentless lessons about honor and responsibility. His earliest memories included his father's voice, low and serious, explaining what it meant to carry the Al-Nuaimi name. A man who cannot control his household controls nothing. His father had told him repeatedly, "Your name isn't yours alone. It belongs to generations before you and generations yet unborn." These weren't abstract concepts in the world Hamdan inhabited. They were concrete business principles. Family reputation directly affected investment opportunities, government contracts, and social connections that translated to billions in assets. Honor wasn't just tradition, it was tangible capital that could appreciate or depreciate based on public perception. He hadn't planned murder. When he discovered Bianca's deception, rage had overwhelmed reason, not because he cared about the woman herself, but because the fraud threatened everything he had been raised to protect. In that moment of pushing her against the marble vanity, honor had outweighed humanity. Now, standing before her grave, the equations weren't balancing as neatly as his financial spreadsheets. Something inside him, perhaps the education that had exposed him to Western concepts of individual rights, perhaps basic human empathy that wealth couldn't completely extinguish, kept returning to the image of Bianca's final moments. Her whispered pleas about children he hadn't known existed. The life draining from eyes that had looked so much like the woman he had intended to marry. The white roses fell from his hand onto unmarked earth. An offering that changed nothing. Absolution that couldn't be purchased even with his billions. If you're finding this psychological portrait disturbing, hit that subscribe button. Because understanding how systems transform ordinary human beings into both victims and perpetrators helps us recognize patterns that continue repeating across cultures and economic classes around the world. Hamdan's guilt manifested in small, private gestures that puzzled his inner circle. The unmarked grave received fresh flowers weekly, delivered by drivers instructed never to question the unusual errand. Anonymous donations flowed to Filipino children's charities. A private investigator was discreetly hired to locate Bianca's children and establish a trust fund that could never be traced back to its source. But guilt and self-preservation maintained uneasy coexistence. While his private conscience wrestled with what he had done, his public persona recovered with calculated precision. He appeared appropriately somber at business functions, accepting condolences for his bride's tragic passing with dignified restraint. His family's PR team carefully managed his reemergence into social circles, emphasizing resilience rather than grief. Within 6 months, engagement rumors began circulating through Dubai's elite community. Sheikh Hamdan Al-Nuaimi was reportedly considering a new marriage contract, this time with a verified bride from Indonesia, vetted through a different agency using even more stringent protocols. The business of dynasty couldn't pause for inconvenient moral crises. Heirs were required. Family expectations hadn't changed. The wheel continued turning, crushing anyone who couldn't maintain pace with its relentless momentum. But somewhere in Dubai, truth waited to emerge from unexpected quarters. Anissa Rahman had worked at Dubai Modern Mortuary Services for 7 years, processing hundreds of expatriate remains for repatriation or local burial. Most cases passed through her hands with professional detachment. Forms completed, procedures followed, emotions compartmentalized behind necessary bureaucratic barriers. But something about the Filipino bride's case had nagged at her consciousness from the moment the private medical transport arrived with unusual documentation and explicit instructions to minimize processing time. No family viewing necessary, the paperwork had specified. Expedited burial requested. The death certificate listed cardiac arrest, but Anissa had worked with enough bodies to recognize inconsistencies between documented causes and physical evidence. The bruising patterns. The skull fracture that morgue lighting revealed despite someone's attempts to conceal it with careful hair arrangement. She hadn't said anything initially. Her position depended on discretion. Her family's residence visas depended on her continued employment. Questioning high-profile cases had ended colleagues' careers and resulted in rapid deportation notices. But conscience has a way of demanding acknowledgement, particularly for those who handle the dead. The woman on her processing table had once been someone's daughter, someone's mother, according to identification documents found during standard cataloging of personal effects. The most damning evidence had emerged when Anissa removed the elegant evening slippers still on the woman's feet. Tucked inside the right shoe, folded into a tiny square that had escaped detection during previous examinations, was a note written in neat handwriting. "If I don't come back, tell my kids mama was trying to save them. Jasmine and Miguel Reyes, Cebu City, Philippines. House behind St. Michael's Church." If you're wondering how truth emerges despite systems designed to suppress it, remember to hit that subscribe button. Because what happened next reveals how even the most carefully orchestrated cover-ups can unravel through simple human decency crossing paths with terrible injustice. Anissa made a decision that placed her own security at risk. She photographed the note with her personal phone before placing it with other processed belongings. She documented the inconsistencies between the official death certificate and the physical evidence before her. And then she waited 6 months, until her family had secured more stable residency status, before anonymously forwarding everything to a Filipino overseas workers advocacy group. The information spread through encrypted channels before reaching public awareness. Screenshots of Anissa's documentation appeared on advocacy websites. Social media accounts shared Bianca's story with hashtags demanding investigation. International labor rights organizations issued statements calling for accountability from both Dubai authorities and the Philippine government. The evidence leaked to an increasingly viral audience, but UAE immediately blocked coverage within its borders. Internet filters caught keywords related to the case. Local media outlets received direct instructions to avoid any reporting that might damage national reputation regarding foreign worker protections. Golden Lotus Bridal vanished overnight. Its offices emptied, websites deleted, phone lines disconnected. Within weeks, Azure Brides appeared in the same business district with suspiciously similar service offerings and client lists. New name, same predatory practices, identical exploitation machinery operating just below legal visibility. Sheikh Hamdan faced no charges. No investigations disrupted his business calendar. His engagement to the Indonesian bride proceeded with appropriate cultural celebrations, though more subdued than his previous wedding arrangements. UAE law offered no protection for contract brides, whose status existed in deliberately created gray areas between marriage, employment, and property transactions. The Philippine government, dependent on billions in remittances from workers throughout the Gulf region, issued carefully worded statements about ongoing diplomatic discussions that produced no tangible results. The system had functioned exactly as designed, protecting wealth and power while rendering expendable lives invisible even in death. If this story has left you questioning the institutions we trust to protect basic human dignity, you're beginning to understand why we investigate these cases. The most disturbing aspect isn't individual evil. It's how normal, even likable people become capable of terrible actions when systems reward silencing the inconvenient rather than confronting uncomfortable truths. In the quiet moments when he believed himself unobserved, Hamdan sometimes stared at the wedding photograph on his office credenza, the only image of Bianca he had kept. The frame displayed what appeared to be grief for a lost bride, appropriate decoration for a widower's desk. But closer inspection would reveal something his colleagues never noticed. The photograph had been carefully altered, the face subtly transformed through expert digital manipulation. The woman smiling beside him wasn't Bianca Reyes. It was Ana Cruz, the bride he had actually purchased, the woman who should have been in that hotel suite. He paid $3 million for purity. He got a lie. And in the end, both women paid the price. In our final segment, we'll examine the global implications of this case and what it reveals about international bride markets operating in the shadows of wealth and diplomatic immunity. Don't forget to subscribe, because this story reflects patterns repeating daily across borders where poverty meets privilege with predictably tragic results. 3 months after Bianca Reyes' body was laid in unmarked earth, her story began circulating through international human rights networks, a whisper campaign that powerful interests couldn't completely silence. The Philippine Department of Foreign Affairs, responding to mounting pressure from labor advocacy groups, announced a comprehensive review of agencies facilitating international marriages for Filipino citizens. Press conferences featured stern-faced officials promising accountability. Task forces were assembled. Committees were formed. Public statements emphasized the government's commitment to protecting vulnerable women from exploitation abroad. But those watching closely noticed how carefully officials avoided mentioning specific cases, companies, or client countries. The investigations focused exclusively on procedural improvements within Philippine jurisdiction, passport verification, exit interviews, education campaigns, while deliberately sidestepping the international systems that created demand for verified brides in the first place. It's theatrical governance, explained Jasmine Santiago, founder of Filipino Women's Dignity Coalition. They're investigating the supply side while ignoring the demand, examining the recruitment while protecting the purchasers. It's like arresting street-level drug dealers while giving immunity to cartel leaders. If you're still with us through this disturbing journey, hit that like button. Because understanding how these systems maintain plausible deniability while facilitating human exploitation helps us recognize similar patterns across industries and borders. The fundamental challenge in addressing Dubai-based marriage agencies wasn't just corruption or insufficient oversight, it was jurisdictional design. Firms like the rebranded Azure Brides operated in deliberate legal gray zones, incorporating in territories with minimal regulatory requirements, processing payments through offshore banking systems, and conducting business across borders where enforcement mechanisms couldn't reach. When Philippine investigators attempted to subpoena records from the former Golden Lotus offices in Manila, they discovered corporate shells within shells, each entity registered to non-existent addresses or nominees who couldn't be located. The paper trail dissolved into digital networks hosted on servers beyond national jurisdiction. Extradition agreements between the Philippines and UAE contain specific exemptions for cultural practices related to family formation, diplomatic language deliberately crafted to protect marriage agencies servicing wealthy Emirati clients. These weren't loopholes. They were architectural features designed into international agreements by governments balancing human rights concerns against economic relationships worth billions. Meanwhile, in a quiet Cebu neighborhood, Bianca's children continued waiting for a mother who would never return. 7-year-old Jasmine and 5-year-old Miguel drew pictures of a woman whose face was already fading from their memories. Their grandparents tried answering impossible questions about why Mama couldn't call anymore, why she sent money but never messages, why she had gone to a place they couldn't follow. The psychological cost of Bianca's absence extended beyond her immediate family. Ana Cruz, recovered from dengue fever but trapped in ongoing agency contracts, carried survivors' guilt that manifested in night terrors and panic attacks. Her brother received the dialysis that kept him alive, but the family rarely discussed the true price paid for his treatment. If you're wondering what this tragedy reveals about the psychology beneath these systems, stay with us. Because what happened in that Dubai hotel room wasn't just about one man's rage or one woman's desperation. It was the inevitable collision of systems that commodify human beings while stripping them of protection. This wasn't about sex, explained Dr. Eleanor Montgomery, forensic psychologist specializing in cases involving wealth and violence. It was about ownership. For men in Hamdan's position, these arrangements aren't primarily about physical desire. The bride is a vessel for legacy, carefully selected, medically verified, contractually bound to produce heirs that continue family wealth and influence. When Hamdan discovered the deception, he wasn't just facing personal betrayal. He was facing existential threat to his identity as someone who controls his world completely. The expert analysis revealed parallels with other cases we've examined. Compare Bianca Reyes to Rashida Montgomery in our Dubai mansion case. Dr. Montgomery continued. Both women were reduced to transactions, but one was killed for leaving, the other for not being real. The common factor isn't cultural background but power dynamics that transform people into possessions. Sheikh Hamdan Al-Nuaimi's new bride arrived from Indonesia 6 months after Bianca's death. 22 years old. Nursing background. Verified and documented with even more rigorous protocols. The wedding was private, attended by family and close business associates, rather than the extravagant public celebration that had preceded his first marriage. Photographs showed a beautiful young woman with perfect posture and carefully controlled expressions. Her dowry, negotiated through a different agency, reached $4 million, the premium price reflecting heightened security against further irregularities. Life continued in patterns that wealth makes possible. Hamdan expanded his real estate portfolio into emerging Asian markets. His family announced a new charitable foundation supporting healthcare initiatives. Business publications featured profiles praising his innovative investment strategies and commitment to sustainable development. If you're asking yourself how someone responsible for a woman's death could resume normal life without consequences, you're encountering the reality that justice operates differently depending on which side of privilege you stand on. In unmarked graves across Dubai, other women shared Bianca's fate, victims of systems designed to protect wealth rather than vulnerability. Government statistics revealed troubling patterns. Over 30 foreign brides died annually from natural causes, within months of marriage to wealthy Emirati men. Death certificates consistently listed heart failure, stroke, or unspecified medical emergencies. No autopsies, no investigations, just paperwork processing bodies that had failed to fulfill contractual obligations. Bianca Reyes didn't die because she was weak. She died because the system saw her as replaceable, a malfunctioning product rather than a mother who made desperate choices in impossible circumstances. Her story exposes the dark pipeline of global marriage markets where love is a cover and contracts are cages. If this investigation has forced you to reconsider what you thought you knew about international marriages and wealth privilege, share it with others who might benefit from understanding these hidden systems. Subscribe for weekly explorations of cases that reveal the machinery behind headlines, the human cost behind luxury, and the patterns connecting seemingly isolated tragedies. Because sometimes the most expensive dowries buy the cheapest lies, and the deadliest consequences. Next time you hear about a dream wedding in Dubai, ask, who verified her, who profited, and who disappeared when the truth came out? Because in the shadows of skyscrapers and behind the doors of marble mansions, transactions continue that reduce human beings to commodities with expiration dates. Ana Cruz eventually escaped her contracts through assistance from an underground network helping exploited workers leave the Gulf states. She lives now in Canada, working as a hospital aide while studying to recertify her nursing credentials. She sends money monthly to support Bianca's children, carrying a debt that financial transactions can never repay. Sheikh Hamdan occasionally visits the unmarked grave with white roses, performing private penance that changes nothing about the systems he continues to benefit from. His new wife has already delivered a son, securing the legacy that justified Bianca's treatment as expendable. Golden Lotus director Madame Zhang was briefly detained during the Philippine government investigation, but released without charges when key witnesses suddenly became unavailable. She reportedly operates now from Singapore, where regulations provide even greater protection for international matchmaking services, catering to ultra-wealthy clients. If the story moved you, share it. Subscribe, because Bianca's voice was silenced, but ours don't have to be. Behind every perfect fairy tale marriage in luxury surroundings, remember there might be contracts written in invisible ink that spell out the true cost of treating human beings as products to be verified, purchased, and discarded when they fail to meet specifications. The most chilling aspect isn't that these tragedies happen. It's that they happen by design, through systems carefully constructed to ensure some lives matter more than others. And until we recognize these patterns, they'll continue repeating with different names, different locations, but the same devastating results. Thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button to join us next week as we investigate another case where wealth promised paradise but delivered something far more sinister. Remember, behind every perfect image on social media, every fairy tale romance, and every rags to riches story that seems too good to be true, there might be someone planning their escape or planning a crime. The only question is whether you'll recognize the warning signs before it's too late.